family. And in my mind, I was like, damn, I'm learning other things about the world that I didn't need to know. But again, these are some of the things that I learned as well at Meta. And then from Meta, Reddit came and they were like, okay, so we're trying to build the next version of Reddit. And I'm like, between taking care of regulations and privacy and building the next version of Reddit and maybe potentially making Reddit's IPO and make a lot of money. You know what, Tolu, this challenge is a little too good to be true. So, and again, similar to what we talked about earlier in the podcast, where it's like, if you're making hiring and firing decisions, this is Meta that is letting people go, even though they're doing amazing work. Meta is not going to have, like, regulation. I mean, sure, we don't want to fire people, but like, and then the funny thing is, when I now agreed to go, Meta then halved my team. So, so you can see, I was like, well, I guess this is life. Right? They made their own decision independently. I made mine independently. I'm like, well, since we're all kosher, maybe if I come back another time, you'll bring me back. But so those kind of things, my team got halved. I was still left. Yeah. So thankfully, I was still spared. But like, that's now a lot more work our team needs to do. And I was like, well, don't worry, I'll see you guys on the other side. So if Meta wants to call me back, of course, I'll consider it again. Maybe like Meta is thinking of making the next version of Threads or whatever. But things like that, then I'll consider it again. But for now, I think I'm in a good spot already. So that's kind of the journey. Working software, went to IBM Masters, in Sportsnet, in Meta, now Reddit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Foreign Gems, where we bring you personal and diverse perspectives on self-development as well as career development. Today we have a guest that Ola has brought to the table. I'm really excited to talk to him. His name is Tolu, and I'm going to pass it over to Ola to give you a bit of an introduction about Tolu.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome back again. We love doing this guest episodes. I'm excited. And this guest today is actually someone who I only recently got to know about from our previous guest, Nene. So Nene shared this story on his Instagram that you need to check out this guy's story. So then I got curious and I clicked, and then I landed on Tolu's Instagram page, and he was sharing his journey of how he came from Nigeria to Canada and everything else that we'll talk about today. I thought that was very inspiring, and I immediately reached out to Nene like, yo, do you know this guy personally? Can we be able to get him on the podcast? And then right away, Nene did his thing. Shout out to Nene. And we got Tolu here today. So yeah, I guess for a quick intro, Tolu is, if you are able to place stocks on people with their potential to cash out in the future, Tolu will probably be one of those people that I would. If you look at his track record, he's done so many things in different fields. He's one of those people that I'm sure no matter what he does, he will be successful. And none of those things have been without their challenges, at least from his story that I know so far. Yeah. So I wanted us to have him on so he can share his story so that we can all learn from what he's done. Welcome to Foreign Gems, Tolu.
Amen. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you guys inviting me, and obviously shout out Nene as well for connecting us. So it's pretty cool. So I guess I'll just do my quick intro. Hi guys, my name is Tolu Arogunmati. I'm a Canadian who lives right now in the US. I moved to Canada in 2009 for my undergrad. I've worked as a software developer, now a product manager, been at a bunch of companies, tried them all out, bought some real estate in Canada, relocated from Canada, and I live in the US now. I still come back and forth every once in a while. So it's a mix of stuff, but I'm more than happy to get into that experience from start to finish. Just to complete my story, right now I am a product manager at one of the big tech companies. I'm also a teacher at a university in Canada as well, where I'm a professor there. I'm also like into real estate. Occasionally I'm a fun guy on Instagram. So that's what it is.
Man, that is an amazing intro. There's so many things to dive into. So I think it's best we just start at the beginning. So Canada, what made you choose Canada? How did you make that decision? Yeah. And like the undergrad choice, take us through kind of what led you down that path.
For sure. So the key thing was at the time when I was really young in Nigeria, I did not want to go to another Christian university. And my dad and my mom were super about like this, there's Covenant University. I was still really new at the time. And I was like, nope, I've done Christian school for like, however many years. I'm not doing it again. So I was really bent on not going to Christian school. I tried to go outside of Nigeria because also I've always had this like bug for like trying new places, new cultures, do different things, And so I wanted to go outside the country. I applied by myself. My parents I didn't even wait for them. I applied to
Yeah.
Ghana at the time, Kwame Nkrumah, and I think one other school in Legon or something like that. And then those two did not respond to me. Either they didn't respond, or or my parents hid the response back to me. Either way, I didn't get it. So, the next thing I know, my aunt at the time had just sent her son to Canada, and she told my parents about it, being like, "Oh, why don't you send Tolu to Canada?" And lucky for me, again, this is one of those things where like I feel like first child, and being a good child at the time, my parents didn't have a lot of like reason to be afraid. So when she told them about like me going to Canada, my parents were like, "Well, I mean, the boy has done everything we've asked of him. Like he's gone to school, gotten good grades, and also for context, at the time I used to be academically arrogant. Like you can't disturb me about school, so they can't be like, go and do your homework because like Tolu has already finished the homework. So there wasn't any, they'll be like, oh, go do this. I'm like, guys, I've already done it. So
Right,
as a
it's done.
result, my parents were confident in sending me to Canada. So it was actually my parents who chose Canada as a recommendation from my aunt. And so that's kind of how Canada came to be, really. Yeah.
Okay. And remind me, what school did you go to when you arrived to Canada?
Yeah. So when I came to Canada, I went to Carleton University. I did software engineering. At least that's what I signed up for at the time. And then engineering became hard. And then I tried to switch into communications engineering, which is still software engineering, just a different flavor of it with some more technical components. And so that's kind of the journey. And at the time, I told my parents, I'm going to do an MBA after. My parents were like, okay, so you're going to do engineering and MBA. Okay. It's one of those like, the boy is having pipe dreams. Sure. Like we've already told him about Canada now. So he's free to dream. So I dreamt about coming to Canada, do my engineering, do an MBA. And that was always the game plan at the time. And here we are now, like a few years later, I've done exactly that. But I guess we'll save that for our next question.
So you mentioned engineering.
Yep.
The last time I checked, your job title says PM. So first of all,
Yep.
what do you do? And I
Sure.
know there's podcaster in there as well.
Somewhere in there. Okay, so what do I do specifically? Today, I work as a product manager at Reddit. I work specifically on a thing called Developer Platform. The idea is to modernize Reddit and give the community all the tools available to make Reddit fun. So if you're a Redditor or you're into the forum and stuff like that, we want to make Reddit as fun as you can make it. So we can make games if you want, we can make quizzes, we can make polls. We're having people that are creating all kinds of like, survivor IO games. So if you think about how like PUBG works or how like Fortnite or like even Call of Duty, people are now making stuff like that on Reddit with some of the tools we're making. If you just want to make it as simple as just like a quiz app or like, for example, a bracket, let's say you and your friends are doing like a bracket for like, NCAA, or you want to do a bracket for even like who's going to win the Bachelor, right? So we're giving you all those kind of tools to be able to build that for yourself. We're going to build some template versions and then we'll allow the community fork off and then just like create their own version based on what we've implemented, so they can like copy our code, add on top, extend, and do whatever they want. Or they can just say, you know what, we don't like this, we're going to make this entire thing by ourselves. So that's kind of the goal. The idea is just to make Reddit more community focused, aside from just the typical like text and then comments and then images and stuff like that. So maybe you can go play games there with your entire community. Maybe you want to just like do something special when anyone joins your Reddit community. Maybe like have like a confetti kind of splash. So that's kind of what I do at work specifically. Outside of that, I talked about it where I teach. I teach product management as well. That's kind of what PM stands for. So I teach that at a university, Queen's University in Canada, one of the best universities here. And so I teach a summer enrichment course specifically around that, where I get to engage master's level students in product management and give them a flavor of it, hoping that they come and join our community. Because again, I feel like it's one of the best places for for people to be in technology. You don't have to be a developer, but if you have a passion for tech and you are curious, come to my class, kind of thing. So that's kind of the thing. And then of course, podcasting every once in a while with my friends, by myself, talking about my story. I have a podcast called My North American Dream. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And of course, I also do real estate as well, just again, because you have to live somewhere. And Canadian real estate has done really well so far. So that's kind of the full gamut of all the stuff I do.
Okay, so like how did you kind of develop these interests? So like the engineering thing you knew you wanted to do, the MBA you knew you wanted to do, and I imagine you did those back to back?
No, I did. There was space in between. So the engineering thing was I finished in 2014. I got a job as a software developer because at the time, even though I wanted to do an MBA down the line, I felt that like the way to become a tech bro was only through software engineering. And so I struggled with software engineering a little bit. Like I understood the concepts, But if you're a developer, you know that there are people that write code that is functional, and there are those that write code that is like just like chef's kiss. Just like you see these guys, you're like, damn, how did this guy think of it?
Picasso.
And so that's kind of what it was. So I didn't have that layer of developer genius, but I still had like the community parts of it. I could connect with people. I could explain the concept. And so someone pulled me aside, and this is now the interesting part of my story. Someone pulled me aside and was like, okay, Tolu, let me tell you the truth. Yeah, this team loves working with you. Everybody enjoys working with you. But the fact of the matter is, as a software developer that we pay you for specifically, you will be average at best.
Wow.
So, and I'm not saying that is wrong, because you can make a living doing that. You can make a lot of money just being an average developer. You don't have to be amazing. But the reason why I'm telling you this is you have the opportunity to be great at something else, which is adjacent to being a software developer. If you consider this product area / business analysis area, now you can bring in all the skills that you have that we don't pay you for. That's like community building, that way your team wants to work with you, where everyone wants to explain concepts. Even our customers, like if they're curious to having any problem, if you can work on it, they will actually specifically ask for you as opposed to other developers on our team. So if you become a product person, now that's almost like part of why you're being paid. Whereas as a developer, it's a nice to have. We don't pay you for that, but it is great you have it. So if you switch into this lane where the developer understanding is great to have, but like it doesn't really matter, and you understand it, but you are so great at this other place where like people want to relate with you, then you might have an amazing career. And at first I was like, first of all, I'm sorry, did you call me average? That was all I heard. I'm like, is this guy serious? But once I got over the shock of like, first of all, they just said I'm average. And again, you need to understand, considering I talked about how like academically I was arrogant growing up, being brought back to earth was tough in that way. University also humbled me. Like I didn't have a great university experience, and maybe I should have even realized that early, because I nearly flunked out of engineering because I failed one particular course twice. And so, but at the time I just kept going because I've always just had this like great about me. Like I didn't come abroad to just like struggle and just like flunk through. No, we'll find a way to finish it. So I had that grit all the way to just finish it out. And so once I did, obviously I come to work as a software developer. I'm like, okay, at least I finished. So I'm going to be good at this one too. And then, of course, when this guy was like, okay, Tolu, just relax. There's this other area. Go and be amazing there. And so I was like, all right, cool. How do I switch? And at the time, the company didn't have enough like to support that kind of transition. So I went to do my MBA so that I could transition. And then it then went back to the original plan of like, you're going to do MBA anyways. I just didn't know that was going to be helpful to get into product management. And so once I did that, I got into being a product manager. I even finished my MBA early. And I think that's kind of where I started to realize that, you know what? This product thing was probably what I needed. Like MBA to me was so much fun, so easy. I was like, hey, this is what I know. We're back. And so I got into product management. I finished my program 2 months early. So everybody else was still in school doing their thing, having fun. I went back. I started working already. So I got my job as a product manager. And then that just set me on my journey to where we are today. So that was at IBM at the time. Yeah.
Amazing. I have a quick question because I think actually a lot of listeners are going to be interested in this, which is the transition to MBA. Because a lot of people consider that, and a lot of people come to Canada with that maybe as like a future plan. I've known some people who have done their undergrad and then done their MBA directly after that.
Yeah.
I've known some people who have taken the time to go into industry and then do their MBA after that. Do you have any advice for people who are considering like their path? Like, do you have an idea of which is better?
Yeah. So there's a couple of sides to it, and just so I heard it right. So first of all, the side of, do you use an MBA while you don't have any education, like any work experience? So I'll start with that part first, and I'll talk about like coming to Canada with a master's degree. So in terms of doing an MBA, it's usually better to have work experience, because then all the concepts they're teaching you become very relevant, right? Like if you learn stuff in theory, you can't really apply, and you also can't contribute in class. You're just like hearing other people's experiences and you don't have anything you can add. So I find personally, based on my own experience and even some of the stuff I've seen in my class, and also when other people are looking to find jobs, it's usually easier when you have some previous experience. Because now we have something of a sample size, one, for you to enjoy the class, and two, to also recruit you. So if you, for example, in my case, where I've been a software developer, I already know that I do not want to be a software developer again. I can work with them, but I know that's not my area. Now being in product and also like supporting people, I also know why some of the finance classes were important. I know why some of the management accounting stuff was important. And so that kind of relevance is helpful while you're picking out an MBA. The other side too is an MBA also helps like your network ability. So like you can connect with people who are alumni and stuff like that. So if you have experience and you know what you're looking for, it can help you pick the university that works best for the career trajectory you're going for. I'll give you an example. In my scenario, Queen's University is really, really good in Canada. It is amazing in Canada. And so in terms of schools I was picking, it was one of my top choices because at the time my mind was fixated on doing a lot of stuff in Canada. If I cared a lot more about like stuff maybe in the US or in Africa or in Europe, then maybe I'll have looked at schools in Europe because that would have been a different mindset again of where I wanted to be. So I cared a lot about Canada. I cared a lot about the network in Canada. And Queens is very, very strong on alumni connection, very, very strong on like Queens helps Queens. So those kinds of things were important to me as I was picking, and I think it was valuable because of where I was in Canada at the time. Now that I'm outside the US, I am now the Queens person outside the US that is trying to get other people support outside the US. So again, it starts to like build on itself because that was important to me at the time. If you don't care about stuff like that and you just care about, for example, having the highest brand name you can get, then again, maybe an HBS becomes valuable to you, right? Or you want to go to like a Duke, you want to go to all these other places that like you want the name brand. But my school was really, really good at that alumni connection, right? Like even till now, anytime they want to do anything that is in tech, they'll call me or like, hey, what are your thoughts on 1, 2, 3, 4? For additional context, and just to close this off, and then I'll move on to the next question. I'm on the board of directors for the Masters of Product Management program. And in that scenario, all the other board members are in government. There's a VP that is in one of the big cinema companies in Canada. We have a couple of people that are like in consulting. So all of us are connected to Queens in some way, shape, or form. And so now, whenever students are looking for anything, we have industry experience to be like, okay, this is what the industry is looking for. We have people that are like, okay, we're now trying to connect students into the government. What is important for the government? And we already have like an acute sense of what is necessary for each one. And so it is not just enough that you get, the degree. We're also thinking, how can we then get you placed? So that kind of thing becomes important to us because that's what that school cares about. Sure, there's some, obviously, you still want to be on the top list, and it's in the list. But that is not enough. So you think of those kinds of things again. If that's what's important to you, then go do that. If it's just you want to get the education, you can do stuff online, right? So you have to pick and choose what's important in that way. So that's kind of the school side. Coming to Canada, there's so many different ways to come to Canada. Of course, education being a very good route to do it. I find that when you're thinking about education with a master's, you want to do it in a way that is useful to your actual career. A lot of people will do degrees just because it's fancy. Again, MBA is cool, is the in thing. So certainly, I also recommend doing an MBA if you can afford it. But if the goal for what you were trying to do was like, for example, working in finance, technically an MBA will get you into finance, yes. But a master's of finance will also get you into finance. A lot of times, an MBA is more generic because you're not sure. And you want to try a range of things that you think you're interested in. So let's say you want to be a consultant, maybe you're considering maybe doing finance, maybe any of those two will be fine. Then again, an MBA opens up a little bit more of that. But if it is, I want to do finance, then why won't you go do an MFin? Because you would still get the same immigration results from Canada. You would still get the same like education, you still get the same career, and it wouldn't be as expensive. So there's that balance you need to, pick and choose while you're doing immigration. But obviously coming through for the immigration for school is helpful because it sets you up for like, for example, PR if you want to stay long in Canada, or maybe if you want to work in Canada. But again, these are all the things you have to factor in. I feel like it's always like specific to each individual situation.
From a lot of things you've said so far, you seem like someone who pivots a lot, and you don't seem like you're emotionally. I mean, you did mention the little bit of feelings you had when the manager told you this is average, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it seems like you're very detached from your feelings about whatever you're doing, and you just use logic to see the truth and then dissect things and take the next move. When did that happen, or like have you always been that way?
I feel like that's an interesting one. I used to care a lot about everything, like a lot. About like anything, I would care too much. Like even now, I think it shows up in passion for stuff. But I think you're right in the detachment from the decision. So I do care about the things I do. Like if whenever you meet me, like even as we're talking right now, like I'm traveling, but have like a travel microphone because I care a lot about how I sound. I care about those kind of things because I want to also do it to the nth degree. Like if everybody is doing it at this level, like I feel like there's an additional level above it that I can do. So I do care about those kinds of like the quality of my work, the way I show up. I care about those kinds of things. The detachment from the emotion when you're making big decisions and things like that came from understanding there was this guy at IBM. His name's Alvin, and I'm going to name drop him now because I don't think he's ever going to hear this podcast anyway.
Hopefully
So
gonna send
Alvin,
him.
there was this guy Alvin. He he came in when I joined IBM. I think it was like a director or something like that. And by the time I left, he was the VP for our division entirely, and pretty much like he was running the Ottawa office, and I think like essentially the de facto second lead in like the Toronto office. So by almost by default, he was essentially running all of Canada. And I remember I used to like sit with him all the time because it was one of the first few times I saw like a black lead at a tech company. And I used to sit with him all the time, like, Alvin, I'm not getting this done. I'm not getting that done. Like, what do these people appreciate? What are they? And he was like, first of all, this is a job. Leave your emotions out of it. This is a job. You are here to put your best foot forward always. You are here to be professional. We're not here to pay you to be the nice guy. We're here to pay. That is irrelevant. It is about getting the job done. So the goal is to have an outcome in mind, a problem to solve, and solving it excellently well. That is the goal, essentially. And obviously, I'm not paraphrasing his stuff. I'm not saying his stuff verbatim. But essentially, as long as you understand that it isn't about you or your feelings, sometimes a business decision, and you have to be okay with that. So if the company needs you specifically as Tolu to be promoted, then the company needs you specifically to be promoted. If the company can do without promoting you, it is not because you worked extremely hard. All those kind of like, oh, I'm doing my best. That's cool. But the business does not require that, right? You are paid at a certain level to do a certain job. And as long as you do that job, you're at that level. If you then go to the next level and the company says, okay, there's opportunity for that kind of person and you are the next best candidate, then we move you. You can do all you want to be this person, to be that person, and it doesn't matter because the business doesn't need it. So your goal is to always find what the business needs and move there. What the problem needs, you move there. Like that is your goal at all times. So if something pisses you off at work, leave it at work and you move on and do what you need to do. You cannot also take those problems home. It is a job. It is just a job. And at the time I was like, damn, this guy's cold. What do you mean? And there were a lot of moves. I remember the first time he made some executives moves in terms of like, making hiring decisions, firing decisions. And there were people who had, again, IBM is 100 and something years old. People go to IBM and retire there. People just like find a job at IBM, they never leave. And I remember there were a couple of people like 15 years in and they were let go. And I was like, damn, so cold. Whoa. Yeah. He's like, again, we need to move with agility. This was his face. The business needs to move with agility. It is not personal. I want to thank everybody for the work they've done. They've been fantastic for this organization. We're now moving in a different direction. And I sat with them like, how can you say that to people that, like Tolu, I've told you, it's business. It's not personal. If this is a family, then we'll tell you we're doing family work. You don't do family like that, but this is a job. That's all it is. So when you're making career decisions, you need to have that mindset. Separate your family and your friends. That's why family and friends have a separate experience in your mind. And if you want to mix family and business, again, you have to understand that you are making those kind of conscious decisions. Because at business, you are a businessman. At home, you are a family man. You have to understand that and make those kind of decisions. Now, I don't abandon my friends in the same way that I can abandon a job. It's not personal. Right? So those are the kind of mindset I understand. So I think it was that IBM experience that switched my mind. I was like, okay, we have to do what we have to do for work. And I think the last thing he also told me was, always remember that your goal in the marketplace is to sell your skill set, all right? And to take care of the family at home. So the moment you forget that is when you start caring too much about work. Because then you're going to take that home and be like, oh, I'm this person at home, you're stressed. You have to find a way, whatever that is, whether it's with therapy, whether it's whatever, to remember that the number one priority is the family at home, the people that the office can see. And so do whatever you need to do to make sure those guys are taken care of. And if it is leaving the company, you leave the company. If it is putting your best foot forward at work, then put your best foot forward at work. If it is spending however many nights because you are a single man and you can do whatever you want, then cool. But the moment you have people at home who are waiting for you, young man, don't be doing that. So again, once you start understanding that kind of prioritization and what's really important, you can leave your emotions out of it because again, it's not your father's company.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it is.
That's super.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I took a lot from that. For anyone listening, if you haven't checked out our episode 7 on layoff, where Mark had shared his experience on layoff, this is a nice compliment, or what do you call it? I don't know. They go hand in hand together.
That's
Just
and
remember it.
and addition
Addition,
as
yeah.
well. I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like it adds that perspective because we were talking about impersonal decisions that business make as well.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way you just put it makes it very, very clear. Like just separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like a business has to make its best decisions for itself. You have to make your own best decisions for yourself. You can't necessarily take it personally.
Yep.
And because I don't know if you listened to that episode 7, but a lot of the time layoffs, they're not really about you. So
Yep.
you being in your emotions and like in your feelings, it actually does nothing for anybody in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So the sooner you can separate yourself from a decision like that, the better. Like
You can move on
the
with it.
better it is for you to move on and like figure out what your next opportunity is gonna be.
Hey man, I've been in companies now that like I've done this kind of things like since my MBA, and because I've now gotten on like the more managerial side of it, I can see it. It sucks. No, I'm not gonna lie to you. It sucks when it's done, and of course, like I still like have to like recognize that like there's a human being on the other side of these decisions, right? It's just that like once you start to understand like it's just zeros and ones to somebody,
Yeah.
it's fine. And similar to me, like for me, I do the same thing with hiring decisions for work. I too we fire you as a company. It's not personal, right? Like if another opportunity comes that is doing the needful for what I need, either for my skill set, for my growth, for my challenge, and we gotta do what we gotta do. So I too have now switched into that mindset. And it's only my friends and my family that I'm like, we down on the line here. Like all of us are in it together. So we cannot go anywhere. Those are the people that I saved that part of myself for. Company, don't worry. Last you call me for your December Christmas party. That's it. I don't keep it.
Um,
All like
I
that.
lied, by the way. That's episode 6, not 7.
6.
Episode 6
Episode
layoff.
6.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mark, did you have a follow-up question? Because I was going to switch to something else.
I do have a follow-up question on this subject, so let me get that in there before we switch. So I really love this insight that you're giving people, and like you're giving really actionable, really good advice. I'm sure there's people right now listening to this who are in their feelings about work, and I hope you're taking Tolu's words very, very seriously. But how do you then kind of augment the duality of being somewhat impersonal at work, but also building meaningful relationships with people at work, and being able to kind of have a connection that goes beyond just working at the same company together?
Yeah. I think the key thing is, like we talk about that duality of being a person, the employee, and being a person, the human. And I think while you're treating people as human beings, where like you're courteous to them, you're empathetic to them, and understanding their situation, you have to almost like show up in a way you want to be treated, and you make it clear what your own boundaries are and what your own lines are, right? Like for example, I don't add any of my coworkers on Instagram or any of my socials until I leave the company. Once I've left the company, now we're guys because it's cool.
Yeah.
Because I also understand we're employees. That is the relationship, and I try not to forget it. So I don't have any of my coworkers on Instagram. None of that. When I leave, then I'm like, oh yeah, if you want to add me on Instagram, you can have it. Or like if you want to, it's LinkedIn, and then emails at work. Finish. There is no other line after that. Then that's a boundary for me. And then after that, then it's just like at work we can be best buds. Oh, we're gonna go to lunch together. We're gonna go on team offsites together. That is cool, but I limit that relationship where it is at. And throughout that, I'm gonna give my best self. Of course, like I still show up the most funny guy. Sometimes I'll bring music to my meetings, things like that. I will still show up as myself at work. It's just that I know that is where the line stops. Once we are now outside of that, let's say the context has now changed. So, like for example, some people at my previous company in Canada, Sportsnet. When I'm in Canada, I'll reach out to them like, hey, I'm in town. If you guys want to set up, maybe like a lunch thing, coffee, I'm down if we can hang. So that is kind of that separation as well, because then it makes a lot of things easy. Think about it, like you just told your coworker you're sick, yeah, and it's Friday. Your friends come over and you're playing like board games at home. Uncle, are you not sick? Now again, it's not as if you can't be sick and entertain people. Yes, you can, but it looks somehow because I'm sorry, didn't you say you get it? So, and even if it is legitimate, like for example, in my own, maybe I'm taking care of family. For example, your mom is around. Oh, sorry guys, can't make it. My mom is around. And all of a sudden, you've taken care of your mom all through Friday, all through Saturday, Sunday, and then maybe you decide you want to go to a club and you put it on your Instagram or whatever. And now your coworker is saying that. Uncle, where's your mother inside? Now, even if you were doing what you said, it still looks somehow. So unless your coworker is super cool, I just it's not worth it. It's not worth that like blurring of lines. Just like make it nice and clean for yourself and for everybody involved. When we are outside of this environment, then we can all be guys. So that's kind of how I try to manage it.
In a way, you express yourself like an artist, but I can tell your thought process is very much like a scientist. Like you have like a list of requirements, and it's like as long as I reach these requirements, I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, right, like that's the spice of life. Like you have to have some art and some science to you. Like I put boundaries around like the places where I can be crazy, right? Part of the reason why my life is structured and organized is so that I can be chaotic
Hmm.
within good guidelines. So
I
that's
love
that's
it.
kind of how I am. I'm just trying to have as much of that structure so that whenever I want to be free, I'm free, and it doesn't disturb my mind at all.
When I'm laughing because when I did a Notion presentation a while back, a quote that
Mhm.
resonated with people that I didn't realize while I was saying it was someone asked me a question like, "You seem like you're doing so much, but like at the same time, your Notion is so organized." I said, "Yeah, I
Mhm.
appear so organized because I have a home for my chaos."
Yep. Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You need somewhere where it's like, all right, this is the guideline, and then let's be mad within it. So that's it, for sure.
Okay.
Got you.
All right. Back to the MBA quickly because that was
Yes.
the reason why I was interested in us talking to you. It was
Yes.
fascinating how that happened. Did you want to share
Mm.
your MBA?
The
Yeah, the
story.
story.
Yeah. Okay. So you remember how I told you like in engineering, like I struggled a little bit, and there was this particular course I failed twice. So while I was trying to transition out of being a software developer, there was a specific like process, especially for Queen's University. So they are one of the schools that they don't charge for applying. So the admissions process is free to do. They have an application advisor, and then there's an application committee that will review your application, and then obviously the admission comp that will like accept you and things like that. So what they do is they ask you for like your resume, things like that, and then they want to hear about your experiences, and then your transcripts, and then GMAT, all those kind of like procedural stuff. So I sent in my resume. Of course, it was a good fit. I had done a couple of things at software. I think in software as an engineer. I went to school for engineering. So I mean, and at the time, I'd also work at Canada Post. So Canada Post is like Canada's mail carrier. And I worked at the head office, and I did some like prediction stuff. So I could actually predict reasonably how much mail for every week, and so they could use that for staffing decisions. So it was actually a pretty cool thing I did.
Mm.
Anyways, so they were like, "Yeah, you seem like a good fit for the program. We just need your transcript." And so obviously, I didn't really think too much of it. I sent my transcript in, and then they came back to me being like, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't, you don't meet the criteria." Some. And I was like, "Hold on, what? What do you mean I don't meet the criteria?" They were like, "Yeah, they reviewed your academics, your academic stuff, and essentially you're below the bar, kind of thing." And then I responded back with an email, and I remember printing. First of all, I actually printed out the rejection email. I printed it out, and I looked at it for like 2 days, just stared at it. And I was like, damn, this is what had the audacity to say no. I'm like, nope, we're not accepting this. No, 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 no. So I responded back and explained essentially that like I had come to Canada, of course, bushy eyed and super excited for everything. I worked through my engineering undergrad. I did not have family in Canada other than my cousin, and he was in Toronto. I was in Ottawa, so like, and we're both like about the same age. So like, who is taking care of you? Who is taking care of who? Like, blindly leading the blind.
Mm.
So essentially, I was on my own. He was on his own. And so I told him about that. I explained that like essentially like I didn't have any family support. I had to work through school. Naira was crashing. Like when I came at the time, Naira was like 90 some Naira to 1 or 110, somewhere in that range. And obviously, as we are talking today, so I think it was like 900 and something last week.
Yeah.
It's like 800 and something.
Mhm.
So you can see how far it
Wow.
has fallen. So it was already falling at
Yeah.
that time. So I explained that essentially, even for my parents to like sponsor my life, they could only take care of school fees, and even school fees too. Like there were moments where like I had like late fees regularly. Like I remember even like trying to get my study permit extended. I had to beg the school to like lift my suspension so that I could use the document to prove that I'm still a student, apply to Canada, and they
Yeah.
could put it back. So like
Mm.
it was tight. It was tight. And so I had to work through school to be able to pay rent. I talk about like my friends all the time. Like I had this $1 cup with my friends because we couldn't afford to buy food or anything like that. So $1 drink at McDonald's, and if you had the cup, you could go back and refill it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we just didn't buy drinks anymore. We would not share like junior chicken. I was the point where I didn't have any money for food anymore, and my friends were like, "Okay, we'll buy groceries, and then you come cook because I knew how to cook pretty well. So I'll cook at my friend's house and I'll eat there because I literally didn't have anything to eat anymore. So I explained to all them all these things that like essentially I've come from all of that. Like, and it's not to say again that I'm poor, but like when you look at the naira to convert to Canada thing and it's falling regularly, it's hard. And if you have to work to just be alive, to even go to the class, and even in the class you have to skip the class to go and work, like it's not easy. And so they were like, okay. And then I talked about all the other things I've done since, right? Because at the time I had bought, I explained that, but I think I bought like my second house at the time, and I was renting out like that one, and the one I lived there I was house hacking, so I was renting to 3 other people. So I talked about how like essentially I've recovered from all of that, and I think this is an opportunity for me to like showcase that like I'm better academically again. And so they read my email and they were like, okay, let's see how you perform in your GMAT, and they'll take it from there. And so long story short, they went from all of that to giving me a scholarship to come. So they gave me a sizable amount to come to the school, and then they accepted me into the program. And so that was kind of how it all reversed from them saying no initially because of my grades, and obviously me being tenacious and like trying to explain like the situation and the scenarios of my background and stuff. And then I got into the program. I think if it's funny, as I'm talking to you, I actually wearing one of their shirts. But yeah, so they brought me into the program, and of course I met all the staff and what have you, and I got knowing my team and everybody. And you know, now we're 5 years after, I think 5-6 years after, and I'm one of the younger professors in the actual like school. So it's kind of crazy to go all the way from that to like being rejected. They were like, okay, we'll actually accept you. We think there's unique circumstance that explains the scenario. Gave me a scholarship to join. I joined the MBA, knocked it out of the park, came back, became a professor. So like when you think about all those like trajectory, I'm also on the board of directors for one of their master's programs. So like that whole thing for me is like, yeah. So that's kind of the experience, really.
What a story, man.
Mark,
That's incredible.
Mark and I, we talked about our journey as well, and I am curious to know how many people have a very similar story. Because mine was very much like that. Trying to renew my study permit, I never had the requirements. I never, but I always use what I have. Hey, I'm doing 5 jobs. Hey, I'm doing all those things. Everyone knows me in school. Get a letter from professors that like me. Get a letter from people that don't even know if they should be writing you letters.
Hey, and that's the thing I try to tell people all the time. Like, you need to stop looking at what you like. Forget the things you don't have. What you do have, you have to make the best of, right? Like, some of us would have loved to have all the money in the world. Would have loved to have done things differently. But like, the one you do have, you have to make do, man. Like, it is what it is. You keep pushing. So, a lot of times people also do this like imposter syndrome thing, where it's like, oh, they won't accept me. Me specifically, they didn't accept. This one is like, you are telling them they won't. They've not even applied. When I applied, they told me no, and I still got in. So I tell people all the time, like, I don't know it's necessarily that I'm smart. Like, don't get me wrong, I do understand that there's some smarts to me. But like, I think the thing that shows up more for me is that I don't stop. Because it's like, I want this thing, I'm going to keep going and going and going. Like, you find a way. So even if you're struggling, just have some kind of positive attitude about it and just like keep showing up. The biggest part of it is showing up. Then whatever we're meeting from, we'll find a way. Just find a way to show up is the most important thing. So it's only if you're there that you can play the game. If you're not there, you don't get to play
Tenacity, man. That's and great, I guess. That's something that a lot of people need to do more. And also just, don't assume. Play the game first, see where you fail before you quit. It happens a lot. Even at Memorial University, there used to be this artificial rule at the time where people say you can't work more than 20 hours a week. And I got to university and everyone was saying you can't work more than 20 hours a week. And I'm like, I have rent to pay. I have to buy textbooks. I have no choice. I don't want to steal. So what do you mean I can't? Then I was like, how does this work? Then I went and looked at my documents and went to the websites, CIC, Canadian Immigration. And then I noticed they said it's recommended not to work more than 20 hours. I was like, recommended for who? If in a normal word, it is recommended. But if I am struggling, then okay, the recommendation doesn't work for me. And once I did that, then I noticed everyone else, it broke, it's like the 4-minute mile or 4 minutes thing. It's this record. Like once someone breaks it, everyone breaks it.
Everybody else does. Yep.
And then everyone started doing it. And now it's like, it's not a rule anymore. So always be careful when someone tells you can't do something, you have to find out for yourself because you might
find the other way.
It might be false information.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. My dad had this thing where it was like, he who says he can and he who says he can't, he is correct. It's
Both
like
are right.
it doesn't matter. Anyone you want to decide to do, you are still correct. So you can find confirmation bias for whatever it is that you're doing. And it's just like you get me again. You need some small level of delusion, to be honest. Small, like a tiny level of delusion is so helpful in life.
A helpful amount.
You get so a decent amount of delusion is helpful because you need that to power through like whatever people are going to tell you. You know, even people trying to come into tech as well, who I teach in some of my classes. I'm like, it's not that hard. Like, there are people that are dumber than you that are here. Like, it's not that special. So that's sort of what it is. I'm like, you need a certain decent amount of delusion just to help you get through it. So
Derek Silvers, I was reading a blog yesterday actually. He said placebos are good if they work for you. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yep.
Whatever
Whatever
works
works.
for you. Who cares if it's
Yeah.
real or not? If it works for you, then do it.
Yep.
Then it's
All right.
good.
Exactly.
Mark, I think you had another question.
Please.
No, I just had a comment to begin with, which is I love that we get a chance to have these conversations and normalize some of these situations.
Yeah.
You know how you're talking about, you know, struggling through undergrad and all of this. And I feel like a lot of international students suffer through the same thing, but maybe are too embarrassed to bring that up with their friends. So they don't realize we're all in the same boat. We're all struggling. We've got one, you know, the $1 cup that we're sharing and things like this.
See.
And it can be something you don't really want to talk about. And you can think that you're going through something alone, but just between the three of us, like we've all gone through that thing where it was like, it's tight. I don't know if I'm going to be here next semester. I don't know what I can do. And then somehow it just comes through. And then the other thing too is it's crazy how much of our lives came down to like individuals being able to write that letter for you, for example, to get all to get the student permit for the next semester and things like this. It's like there were so many moments where it was tight,
Yep.
and then just the right person came in, did something that was maybe they shouldn't have, or they looked at you and they loved your story, and then they just switched it and made it happen.
Yep.
So I say all that to say, like, yeah, okay, there's rules and recommendations. You can't work more than 20 hours, blah, blah, blah. But you talk to the right person, you tell them your story, and doors open up for you. And like, I think both of you have shared great experiences of that.
You know, I'm going to add to that as well. Like, I think too many people have, like, I understand, like, you know, home training and not, you know, not embarrassing yourself outside. But I try to recommend people that honestly, it's good to not have shame. Like, forget that shame thing. Like, don't have shame. Just like, see, this is my story, this is what I'm working with. Like, you cannot shame the shameless. Like, see, you can't shame me. Like, this is my story. You can't beat me. So
Yeah.
I want to tell you how I'm experiencing it. Like, even today, I had to talk to my manager because, like, there's a lot of stuff he's expecting of me. Because as you can imagine, like, to have put in charge of this team, I might say, guy, in my household, I'm the first child. You essentially become half a parent. I'm thinking, like, see, guy, it's not easy. My brother just moved to Canada. Guy, I need to have some patience. Like, be calming down. So, and this is, again, you know, that this is me even at this current level now. So, these things, like, that time when I was struggling, like chasing bus and falling down, I did see, guy, you cannot tell me story. Like, there was no way you could shame me about any. See, this is my life. This is my story. I'm chasing the bus, guy. So, oh, that one that people say, oh, you don't have a car. I do have a car. I cannot afford it. I'm still riding the bus. When I first came out of school, I still was living in my basement that I was living in as a student for like the last 3 years. I still live there. The house I bought the first time was even the place I still live. So, like, the need to like start inflating yourself and being like, oh, I'm a big boy now. I beg you. I don't have that shame. I don't have it at all. So it's not necessary. It will help your life if you just, you know, keep that humility about yourself.
Humility, man. Keep your identity small. You know, don't create labels for yourself. Just do what you need to do to survive. Stop saying, I'm not the type of person that does this. I'm not the type of person that does that. No.
Yeah.
That doesn't take anyone
Exactly.
anywhere.
Do what you got to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, we're not podcasters, Mark and I. we had a passion for
We just happen
sharing
up.
information and helping people who are like us, who don't have this information readily available, and we're doing it.
For sure. I mean, what you guys are doing is super cool too. Like, I really appreciate it because I think many of us need to start sharing what really happened and the real stories of all this kind of stuff. So, of course, when they connected me, I was like, yo, this is certainly where I want to be. It's kind of what I do. Even my own podcast, like, I didn't want to be like one of these podcast bros that's just like talking about women and like your personal story and dating and what have you.
Yeah.
So I tried to do the exact same thing you guys are doing. But in my own mindset, it was like, similarly, let me just share whatever I know and leave it alone. Because my friends are going to come and ask me, okay, Tolu, how did you podcast is here? So that way, at any time, just go and listen to all of it. So you guys are like, well, on the same mindset in that way, where it's just like, I love it. I love the coordination with you guys are doing and also getting guests because honestly, you are doing more than me. The work that it takes to do stuff like this, more power to your elbow.
Uh,
Well done, guys.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I
Appreciate
think
it.
Nene is also starting a podcast again. I think we need
Yeah,
more of these.
Yeah.
It's not a competition. We need
yeah,
different angles, and we all have
yep.
the same mission, but it
Oh, for
cannot be
sure,
done in
Yeah.
different ways.
for sure.
The last few questions we have, I guess, is around motivation and influences. So, like, what
Mhm.
motivates you? You seem to be a very driven person.
Ye- I feel like, man, that's an interesting one. The primary one was number one. I felt like I didn't want to go back to like struggling like I did in my undergrad. Like that was such a visceral experience for me for the 4 years, and it's one of those things that I don't like. Even my parents don't know how bad it was because in their mind, obviously, they're doing the most best they can. And on their own side, I think I remember my mom also sold her car, so I felt like a burden a little bit when I came, and I always felt like I didn't want to be that anymore. And so a lot of what drives that is like I recognize the sacrifice that they made, the sacrifice that I also made, of course. I don't like reduce it for anything, but I also want to make sure that none of us, whether me or them, are in that position if none of us have to be. So that's kind of step one. Then number two, I'm a Nigerian guy, and as the first child, everybody has the dream that they cannot hold family meeting without you. So, so you can't be useless at home. Like I feel like there's that like need to be a contributing member. Of course, there's some necessary noise you need to be able to make that. You're coming home, yes, kind of thing. You cross the seven seas, you can't just come back useless. Like, okay, so why did you go abroad? So there's
Yeah.
obviously that part too. That's at the back of my mind. And then the most important thing to me, I think, is like I also enjoy like a lot of like life's adventures. And like it's important to me to put myself in a position to enjoy it to the level that makes sense. Like I really enjoy travel, as you guys have already figured out. Like I really enjoy new experiences as well, like trying new things and just like giving that experience a go. And unfortunately, adulting has made it in a way that you can't just do that just because you feel like. So you need the money to do that. And so as a result, because of that need to want to show up in ways that make me feel best, whether it is about traveling, whether it is about like making friends, connecting with people. I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm worried that, oh, the reason why I can't do anything is because one, two, three, four. Right. I always want to be in a position where like I'm free to do a podcast, for example. Right now, this is 4 p.m. on a Friday, right? Because my work is remote, I can do stuff like this and get back to it and work all night. So
Yeah.
those kinds of freedoms are important to me so that I can actually do the things I like. And that's why I've not really considered entrepreneurship that much because all the things that people do entrepreneurship for, I already have. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that drive me. And so because of stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of why I wake up in the morning. I have the freedom to do stuff. I have the freedom to chase my passions, the things I'm interested in, to get really good at my job. And of course, I can take care of my family at home. I can take care of my people. I can show up for my people in the most authentic way. Man, those are the things that make it all worth it. The moment I have enough money to not work again, I'm telling you, that day, gone, gone. I know the number specifically. The day I hit it is over. You cannot beg me to come back. You can't. Because
Yeah.
the things that are important are outside of work. So that's kind of what
What would you be
it's
doing
all
in
about.
that case if once you hit that number?
Oh,
Mm, great question, man.
so yeah, I've already see you don't understand that. I already have the game plan. You made mistake. Okay, so the moment I'm done, right, I am no longer tethered to North America. So the game plan then becomes if I want to retire back to Canada, I don't like winter. So I'll probably live in like somewhere in Toronto during the regular warm months and then be in Barbados. If, for example, someone's daughter decides to, confuse me, then it'll be Toronto and Barbados. That's kind of the two countries I'm going to straddle. If somehow my mother is crying and I have to be in like the side that's closest to Nigeria, it would likely be Portugal because Portugal has a really good visa program. They have like it's really good for digital nomads. Quick flight to Lagos if you need to. Great weather, and they also speak a decent amount of English. So be Portugal if I have to be in Europe. Then if it is not Europe, I could also do Dubai. Really, really great place to be. Really great again for digital nomads. And also if you want to start a business. So Dubai is really great in the Middle East. No, none of that. So that's kind of the location side of what I would do. Then in terms of the things I would do, I'd probably lean more into like the content creation stuff where I'm just like sharing about all my experiences. Either it is about like, for example, being a Canadian in the US. So right now I don't need like H1B, I don't need a green card. I can just show up, get a job, and I'm here. So yeah, I'm most essentially like an American. So I can talk about stuff like that. So it's like if you want to live in America, the best way is probably to go to Canada first and become a citizen. Because then you have access to the US really easily. You can go and come back. things like that, or maybe my immigration journey. I could also talk about like stuff I've learned in product management across like IBM, Sportsnet, Meta, and now Reddit. So again, that's a wide range of experiences. Canada, in one way, US in another way, an American company in Canada at IBM, and then all those kind of different uniqueness of all those different things. Interviewing, how to interview, how to prepare for product manager interviews, all those kinds of things. Because as you can imagine, all these different companies have different levels of interviewing, and all of them look for different things. So I can share all the dubs because I have it, and I've also been on the interview side. I'm actually interviewing someone on Monday next week. So all those different things I could also do. I could then also lean further into teaching, because right now as an adjunct professor, it's only like per course as you need it. And maybe I could think about maybe if I'm going to do a PhD, for example, or like actually go and contribute to the academic community. So that could be another thing I do. And then also I could then go and maybe do my radio thing that I finally, now I don't need the money. I can now go hang on radio, just like have fun with it, because it's a fun job for me. I have no problem doing those kind of things. So those are all the different areas I already have. So I already have the game plan. I'm ready. See, that's what I'm saying. Like the day starts, I'm going.
You should just start Tolu Network. So like,
I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready. Trust me. Like similar things like this, programming, those kind of things, like different ideas for fantasy podcasts that I have. I have a separate fantasy podcast that I do with my friends. I have the one that I talk about, like, like immigration and all these other things. I thought about one called My Product Life for product management. But again, how many things can I do? I just had to hire an assistant, because then only one person, you cannot kill yourself. And I still need to live my life. And also I need to find wife. So all these things, like, man, Tolu, you don't worry. The time is coming. Once I free myself from needing money, then you start to implement a little more of those things. But, the right time is also as important as having a really great idea. So maybe it's not the right time yet. We'll come back to it in due time.
You're preaching to the choir right now, because Mark and I, we have exact same things. We always have to order ourselves back from things we want to do.
Yep. That is
too many things out there.
Exactly.
Too many interests. Exactly. You just want to go after everyone.
Exactly.
But like Ola mentioned before, I love the methodological kind of structure that you put to everything. You know what you want to do. You know like what you need in order to get it done, and it's just a matter of like going through the motions at this point, and also having that grit and tenacity to just like go through all of the steps necessary to get there. And speaking of steps, I realized when we were talking about your journey so far, we only got to IBM. And then you just named other huge names. We did not talk about
Okay. So, all right. So after IBM, so I worked at IBM for a couple of years, and then I worked at Rogers Sportsnet. So Sportsnet is the broadcasting arm of Rogers Media, and Rogers is one of the biggest telecom companies in all of Canada. So Sportsnet, essentially for people who are outside Canada, is like ESPN in Canada, pretty much. So they own the Blue Jays, so the MLB team. They also share ownership of the Raptors and share ownership of TFC. So it's pretty big, and obviously they share all the coverage of stuff like that. And so when I joined, I was in charge of mobile apps, the mobile apps team entirely. So I was in charge of Android, iOS, and that full experience in Canada. And at that point, I was there for a good amount of time in Toronto. That's what brought me to Toronto, and I lived there for about a year. Then Meta came because they were like, well, we're trying to do some stuff with mobile, so come join. And unfortunately, part of the reason why I left at the time was because the Rogers family started fighting. So I don't know if you guys heard about it at the time. So they all started suing themselves. And then unfortunately, all that fighting started cascading down towards me. So the president of sports and media got fired. The VP of my org got fired. The director of my team specifically, this is one level above my manager, also left. So by the time you see all that cascading down to you, I mean, is it that one, you get fired, which was very unlikely, but could still happen, or we just didn't get any budget. And so for a long time, we didn't have any budget to do anything. So we're just like in a holding pattern, couldn't really do anything, couldn't change the apps, couldn't do it. And it's just like, what's really going on here? So unfortunately, at the time, that's part of what motivated me to leave. But it was a fantastic gig. Like, you were paying me to watch sports that I was already watching for free. Hey. So a fantastic gig though. So Meta came, and then I joined them, and then the privacy team came and matched with me, where they were like, my job at the time was to make any declarations about privacy true. So if there was any, like, when they say, for example, we don't sell your data, we have to make that technically true, right? As much as technically feasible. So, for example, they don't sell your data, they just sell the usefulness of your data. So you won't know it is specifically Ola or specifically Mark. It will be that there are these two guys in Canada who do podcasts. Yeah. So that's kind of the usefulness of the data as opposed to who it is, because who it is doesn't really matter. And so let's say I'm looking to advertise to people that make podcasts, and all three of us are in the same space. Meta will know that information about us and present that information to us. The customer will not know who it is specifically, but Meta will, using our data, know that it is us specifically we're interested in it. So that is selling the usefulness of your data than selling actual data. So a lot of times people are like, oh, you sell our data. It's like, no, it's not like they send the file off. That's not what happens. So that's kind of the difference. And so a lot of what we try to do was to make stuff like that really true. So anytime there'll be like a change to any of those settings, that's where you see those pop-ups to make it all like understandable and true. And if you turn it off, things like that, what can happen? How do we roll it out across the world? Because, for example, Europe has different requirements, Brazil has different requirements, South Africa has different requirements. So in a way, I also grew understanding different like regions and like regulations so randomly. And in my mind, I was like, damn, I'm learning other things about the world that I didn't need to know. But again, these are some of the things that I learned as well at Meta. And then from Meta, Reddit came and they were like, okay, so we're trying to build the next version of Reddit. And I'm like, between taking care of regulations and privacy and building the next version of Reddit and maybe potentially making Reddit's IPO and make a lot of money. You know what, Tolu, this challenge is a little too good to be true. So, you know, and again, similar to what we talked about earlier in the podcast, where it's like, if you're making hiring and firing decisions, this is Meta that is letting people go, even though they're doing amazing work. Meta is not going to have, like, regulation. I mean, sure, we don't want to fire people, but like, and then the funny thing is, when I now agree to go, Meta then halved my team. So, so you can see, I was like, well, I guess this is life. Right? They made their own decision independently. I made mine independently. I'm like, well, since we're all kosher there, maybe if I come back another time, you'll bring me back. But so those kind of things, my team got halved. I was still left. Yeah. So thankfully, I was still spared. But like, that's now a lot more work our team needs to do. And I was like, well, don't worry, I'll see you guys on the other side. So if Meta wants to call me back, I'll consider it again. Maybe like Meta is thinking of making the next version of Threads or whatever. But you know, things like that, then I'll consider it again. But for now, I think I'm in a good spot already. So that's kind of the journey. Working software, went to IBM Masters, in Sportsnet, in Meta, now Reddit. So
we're running out of time. I've been enjoying this conversation. I want it to go on forever. Anyone listening, if you want Tolu back, please let us know.
Appreciate it.
Mark and I would love to have him back.
I've got many more questions. We didn't even talk about like the radio side of things. Like, I feel like we just
started,
reached the surface. We just got started. So this was a nice intro to future episodes.
Hey, I'm ready when you guys are. Ready whenever.
Support the podcast. Let us know if you're enjoying this episode. Share with your friends. Okay. Disclaimer: the reason why we're ending this episode is because we're using a free version of a recorded software. Hey,
if you sponsor the podcast and you make enough money, we'll be able to buy it, so it's okay.
Exactly. We are using the Tolu method, which is, we use common sense and pragmatism. If people show interest, we invest. That's pretty much how we've been doing everything. We started with just our phones. People started making comments. We improve the quality, so that's what we're doing. So if you want our episodes to be more, less rushed, please support us.
I love it. That's plug right there, man. Well done, guys.
Yeah.
And
also quick plug as well. Go listen to My North American Dream, Tolu's podcast. So we'll put a link in the description as well. Go check that out. It'll be more insights, kind of just like this. So
he has another one, fantasy one. What do you call it?
Yeah, I should have captained. So that one, oh man, that's a different podcast as well. That was just for my guys. So if you're interested in like fantasy Premier League, that's a passion of mine as well. So feel free to listen to it. I think any advice, feedback as well. Any conversations people want to have about it, I'm more than open. I'm always excited about those kind of things. So feel free.
Thank you so much, Tolu, for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
We're going to have you sooner rather than later because amazing conversation.
Ready whenever you guys are. Appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Yeah,